Hi, everyone. Welcome as we're starting to come into the meeting. We're really excited to share with you the work that we've been doing and get your feedback, get your questions and comments and suggestions. Yeah, we really need your voice in this process as we're developing this tool. So just to get rolling, my name is Lindsay Dakin, and I am the Global Partnerships Program Manager with Amplio. I support all of our partners to successfully launch and implement their projects with us, their partnerships with us. And I've also been working very closely with the team, with Cliff, to develop this new and exciting tool. So really happy to be here and happy to be hosting this with you all. And then also we're going to be hearing a lot from Cliff Schmidt, who is the founder and executive director of Amplio. Cliff, you want to say hi really quick?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to telling you what's new with this tool that many of you have provided input into over the last couple of years.
We will be using Mentimeter throughout the session today. I'm going to start to share my screen. So here are the instructions for accessing our Mentimeter. Okay, so hopefully most of you have been able to make it to Mentimeter. I'm going to start with just a couple warm-up questions. So first, what sector do you mainly work in? I know a lot of us work maybe cross sectors on lots of different projects. We're just interested to know what kind of work you're doing. We are developing some case studies and some demo projects for this SBC Impact Designer software tool. And so we want to make sure that those kinds of case studies are aligning with the kind of work but looks like we have a lot of people so far from the health sector, a couple people from education, and a couple people doing gender and social inclusion work. That's great. A wash friend, thanks for popping in. Definitely looks like a lot of folks are from health. Okay, thank you so much. Oh, we're seeing gender and social inclusion tick up a little bit more. The next question, let's move on to the next one. Just really quickly, this is more of a fun kind of icebreaker. You know, we're not all in the room together in person. We can't really offer you refreshments, but just throw your hat in the ring. Are we team coffee, team tea? Who's gonna throw their weight behind coffee or tea? Looks like team coffee is winning. I'm not voting, but I would put my vote behind Team T. Oh, Team T is catching up, making a strong effort in the second half. That's interesting. Pretty neck and neck, actually. Alrighty, well, looks like coffee's slightly edging us out, but tea's making a strong showing as well. So that's great. Okay, so hopefully by now, most of you have been able to navigate to Mentimeter and respond to one or both of these questions. We will be using Mentimeter more throughout the presentation to get more of your feedback and comments. But at this time, I'm going to hand off to Cliff to start our presentation.
Okay, so I'm going to just start off with a few slides, and then we'll get to the demo. Yeah, so I think you're all here to get a little preview of a beta release that we'll be doing in a couple months from now. So it's important just to kind of set your expectations. You will be seeing live software here, but it is very, very early. We really just want to give you an idea of the kind of functionality and the general areas that this software would cover. We will be having a graphic designer, user experience person do a pretty big overhaul on a lot of the software. But we just wanted to touch base with you now to let some of you, especially those of you who've been contributing to this over the last couple of years, where we're at. First, I want to tell you a little bit about Amplio for those of you who don't know us well. And then I'll show you a short 90-second or so video about what we're trying to do with this social behavior change tool. And then a couple slides to give you an overview, and then we'll jump into the demo, and Lindsay will take over again for the discussion. one question is why is Amplio developing this social and behavior change software, and why is Amplio the right organization to do that? So you see just a little bit about us. We've been actually in our 16th year now, where we have been working on digital solutions for social and behavior change in a variety of different ways. And we've reached over 2 million people now in 14 countries with dozens of partners. Now you see just some of the really key partners that we've had, some from 10 years or more ago and some more recently. But there's actually quite a number of partners. This still doesn't cover all of them. And I just want to take a moment to highlight one in particular. ARM is a corporation that provides the designs for the vast majority of microprocessors in the world. And they have been supporting Amplio's work for over 10 years now. And they are also the major contributor behind the work that I'm going to show you today. So this is just to acknowledge that their support's allowed us to do a lot of what you're going to hear about, and especially what we've done so far with the social behavior change tool. In addition to that, several of Amplio's ongoing major donors have made this possible as well. So before I talk about social behavior change software, I also want to tell you again, just to understand where Amplio is coming from. Most of you will know us for the Amplio Talking Book. And so that's an audio device that provides local language recordings to allow people to share ideas, to learn about topics on health, agriculture, gender issues, land rights, all kinds of things. And then also to provide feedback to organizations like yours that are trying to serve them. And so the thing that we're focused on is people who are being left behind for these various reasons, because of low literacy, because of lack of electricity, or not having the kind of access that many of us think people have until we look a little closer and we realize that there are hundreds of millions of them, and the vast majority are women who are being left out from the typical types of programs. And so for that reason, we have been doing over about 15 years of work now, using the Talking Book with those partners that you saw before. And the reasons why they use the Talking Book are so that people can have access to audio content in their mother tongue, in their local language, have hours of storage, have a speaker so people in groups can listen to this together. They can record their feedback into the device, and then the device can be updated, can be run on local batteries or recharged. So that's just a little bit about the Talking Book. If that's something that you are just finding out about and are interested in, please contact us through partnerships@amplio.org. Now, I'm going to get to the social behavior change software now. With that context, there's just one other thing to kind of bridge this, which is the Talking Book is a piece of hardware, but over these years that we've been working with partners in the 14 countries now, we've had to develop a lot of software to make this work out. And the software basically provides the tools for you to be able to get that audio content organized, get it loaded, through a smartphone app onto the device, collect usage statistics and analyze it, just basically to kind of get all the right stuff in the right place. The most interesting last thing we did was the user feedback application, which allows someone to go through hundreds of local language audio recordings and to tag them according to a survey, so that you can get quantitative results that will guide your program. So this social behavior change software came about as a missing piece in the software suite, because what we realized is that we didn't have anything that helped organizations think about what is the right content that needs to be on these talking books. And then what we realized was that the same sort of software could apply to any social behavior change program. Social behavior change programs, including a key communication point, an SBC program, and whether it was using audio like on the Amplio Talking Books or anything else. So that's where we're coming from. Now I'm going to talk exclusively about the social behavior change product and start off with a brief video.
Social and behavior change is a critical component of every development program, but it's not always easy to achieve. Imagine a digital tool where you, as an SBC practitioner, have one place for a library of expertise at your fingertips, organized project management, and connected collaboration. It's time to stop imagining. Introducing SBC Impact Designer, an open source software platform that provides you with customized SBC guidance. Intuitive project management features help you translate theory into accountable action. Most importantly, designed for collaboration with communities and other stakeholders. No more sorting through hundreds of pages of theory and case studies. SBC Impact Designer gives you just the information you need and the guidance to manage your project at every step. SBC Impact Designer identifies potential issues before they arise. It ensures local insights drive the program and helps you see your project through the eyes of the communities you serve, empowering you to create change. Partner with us to create the world's first comprehensive SBC digital platform at amplio.org/SBC.
Okay, so hopefully that just gives you an idea of what we're after. We produced that video just prior to our participation in the SBCC summit in Morocco last December, so that people just kind of walking by briefly would get a sense of what we're doing. But I'm going to go into a little bit more detail now. So the goal of this is to enable organizations, government, and most importantly, communities to efficiently co-design, monitor, and evaluate their SBC programs and leveraging the best practices and frameworks available. So hopefully, if you keep that in mind, this kind of co-design, monitoring, and evaluating, as you see the rest of these slides and see the demo. Okay, so a little bit about the history. We've actually been working on this since 2020. In 2020, Lindsay presented at the Global Digital Health Forum along with one of our key partners, CBCC in Nairobi, Catherine Lengewa, the co-founder of the Center for Behavior Change Communication. And Lindsay ran a workshop about whether there was a need for this and what this might do. So that was some very early input that we got. And then throughout 2021, we met with 37 UNICEF country offices and regional offices to understand their needs and how a tool like this might be useful. The reason we put so much attention on UNICEF is we've partnered with UNICEF for roughly 10 years in at least 4 countries. And so we started with working with them, but we also spoke with leaders in many other organizations, the Manahoff Group, Johns Hopkins, FHI 360, so many of these other organizations as well that we've worked with. And then in 2022, we started developing the software and presented this at the SBCC Summit. And so what we're trying to enable is, again, this collaboration across partners, including in remote communities, and to be able to get some design recommendations for, now many of you here are experts in social and behavior change, but what I want you to remember is that this software is designed for some of your colleagues and maybe some of your partners who haven't had the same training and don't have the ability necessarily to hire in an expert like you. And so we want the software to try to provide some of that expertise. And then again, to monitor and evaluate your SBC programs. And we see this software being used by quite a range of people, which can be a little bit of a challenge. But the whole idea in collaboration is to bring people together, people that are working at all levels, whether that they're in an NGO, for instance, or whether they're in a government partner, even a donor who may be looking for reports or updates on what's going on with a program. And again, most importantly, community representatives, and I'll be talking about that a little bit. How will they be using this? So there are some tools out there now. You're not expected to really digest this screen capture, but this is just an example of a spreadsheet that might be used to organize a social behavior change program. And while it's a much better thing than having nothing, we think that software can make this a little bit easier. Here's an example of the behavioral drivers model that UNICEF published a couple years ago. And I actually really like it. I think that there's a lot of value. It brings together a lot of different social behavior change theories. It even suggests some various interventions you see around the side. Now, if you want to understand this, you should read at least a couple of these PDFs that you can find that are on the order of about 100 pages. And our concern is that there are a lot of really great PDFs out there, a lot of toolkits that many of your organizations have produced, but they aren't being read and applied as much as they could be. And so we would like to leverage that and make this available in easy to use software. Here's an example of actually how many behavior drivers and dimensions that there are. And again, this could seem a little overwhelming to some people. So is there a way to select which ones are actually most applicable to your project? And can that be done as efficiently and with as much expertise as possible? So here's just a quick screenshot. You'll see more on this in just a moment, of a way that you can browse this instead of paging through hundreds of pages in a PDF, using software to tag things and come back to it. But also, if you have a theory of change, these little light bulbs here that you see here, or that you might see in a framework, an evaluation framework with indicators, we have this idea of, wouldn't it be nice if you could ask the software to give you a hand, maybe make a suggestion on some of these things. And so that's what you're going to see in just a moment. But first, I just want to tell you about where we are and where we're going. I talked about the history of this. So for the future, we will be, as we promised back in December at the SBCC Summit, we will be releasing a very early first beta of the software in June. And many of you, when you signed up, asked to be beta testers. So we will be giving you that opportunity and letting you know that you can create a login for the software and start playing around with it, or ideally actually applying it to one of your actual programs. And applying it to a program is exactly what we will be doing through our staff in Ghana and the many programs that they are involved in, and then also through partnerships in Kenya. So we will be actually having the software, even at the beta level, be used in real programs, and we're going to do some extensive studying of how is that making a difference, what features are working for people, what are not, and then how worthwhile would it be to further develop some of these features based on how much of a difference it makes in the field. So you've probably heard of iterative software development before. We're taking that to a pretty serious level, where we're releasing a beta. We're getting extensive tests from as many people as we can for on the order of months, and then improving the software, making a second beta, and continuing on with some of that field testing, and then release a 1.0 version in 2024. And then beyond 2024, I mean, it is a piece of software, and those of you who have worked with other new software, you know that these things can go on for years in terms of how they can develop and if there's a need for them, where they can go. So now we're ready, or almost ready, for a demo. First, I'm going to hand back to Lindsay.
Hi again, everyone. So just before Cliff launches into a demo, I want to go back to Mentimeter really quickly. We have one question that we want to pose to you all. It looks like coffee in the end won out, but tea again made a strong showing. Just to move to the next question, we want to hear from you in the room. What is the biggest challenge in developing an SBC strategy? For those of you that joined while Cliff was presenting, please, you can navigate to our Mentimeter instructions at the top of this page here, menti.com, and put in that code, or maybe we can put the link again in the chat. But I want you all to think about, as Cliff mentioned a few minutes ago, I know we have a number of SBC experts in the room. So you can think from your experience, or from the experience of your colleagues or your partners, your observations from working with other people on SBC projects. Just kind of give us, some quick thoughts about what do you see as the biggest challenges that people face, either you or your colleagues or your partners, in developing an SBC strategy. We've got a few answers coming in, and please keep contributing on Mentimeter, but let's start to take a look at some of the responses that we're getting. So identifying the correct behaviors, the micro behaviors that you want to affect. Yep. So identifying what behaviors you're targeting. Co-creation, and especially remotely, fantastic. Takes a lot of time, and maybe you need consulting and expertise. Yep. Having the latest evidence. The short-term nature of funding, that's a big one, and reporting requirements, getting funding. What else do we have? Social norms, yeah, figuring out how best to target these kind of sticky social norms. This is great feedback, everyone. Thank you so much. Is there one or two people that want to briefly come off mute and just share your comments live? Does anybody want to say anything to the group on this question? You can raise your hand maybe, or just come off mute and jump in. Yes, Camden, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. This is great so far. I think we're seeing a lot in this chat about contribution versus attribution, or even attribution in general. And I think, the beauty of SBC approaches is that they are a multi-level, multi-channel approach. However, that makes it challenging in terms of looking at the attribution. And, a lot of us are working, with different types of measurements to look at exposure to certain channels linked to attitudes and practices from those channels. And I think that, that's really where, the donors are looking to us to be able to provide information for adaptive management, for better outcomes. It's really an area that we're trying as a community to really make more robust. Over.
Thanks, Camden. One more comment. I see a hand from Elizabeth. Elizabeth, please.
Hello, how are you, Lindsay?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, so for me, from my experience and in the different sectors, I think one of the issues with developing an SBC strategy is having program staff to understand the transition we're trying to make from obsolete communication strategies. And, that goes through the motion of being evidence-based, being able to evaluate what you're doing, and that has implications for funding. And so you have a lot of explaining to do from design to implementation. And so for me, that's really the challenge. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And again, as Cliff was, describing that's really, the spirit behind this tool is to help to kind of translate some of these really complex issues, to program teams on the ground and people that are implementing, and really make it easier and more kind of accessible for those kinds of folks to engage in this kind of work, and create this kind of impact. So thank you so much for your contributions here. I'm going to hand it back over to Cliff. We'll come back again to Mentimeter in a few minutes, so keep this ready. But yeah, Cliff, back to you for the demo.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. And thanks for the contributions from Camden and Elizabeth. Here we go. Hopefully you can all see my screen now. What I'm just going to walk you through some of this. So again, this is live software here. This is not going to be the most beautiful software you've ever seen. We have not yet hired a user experience expert or a graphic designer for this. What we did want to do was to test out the functionality to some of the things that we wondered, how well would this work? And so we've done that. And then we've also kind of put a little bit of a structure together, and with the goal of today is to give you a sense of the ways that this software might be helpful, so that you can give us feedback on, is it really helpful? How important would it be? And if you tell us that some of these features are not so important, we're probably not going to do too much more with it. If you tell us a few of them are really critical, then that's where we're going to improve everything we can about it, and do that before the release in June of the beta version. So what you're seeing here is just on the menu, so you can see here you have just a couple top-level menu items here. I'll just mention this really quickly. This resources section, I'm not planning to show you that right now because that's not where we've kind of focused our efforts. But the resources page would be simply a set of curated links to some of the great frameworks and information that are out there that many of you are responsible for. So if you would like to submit a resource that you think would be really useful, please send it to us. And if we don't already have it, we'll be adding that. So it'll basically be really kind of a evolving library of links to content for people to learn about the kind of things that are built into the software. And then a help menu item to give you some information about it, and also to allow you to send us, especially during the beta, any kind of bug reports or any feature suggestions, or just a way for you to really quickly share thoughts with us. Where I'm concentrating on is the project side. So I'm going to show you, once you're in a project, now this menu here becomes relevant. So I actually have two projects going on at once, so I can select which project I want. And you can see for the current project that I'm dealing with, I have other users, and I can set them as owners or editors or viewers of this. And these people could be part of your own organization or partner organizations who are involved in this. So now I'll start with just the basic project info. So we, where do you start with this? We thought that maybe we would just ask a few key questions. And you start with one of the big ideas with this that Lindsay and I talk about a lot is, how do we make it as easy as possible for you just to put down what you know now? And there's going to be a lot of work that you can do, especially as you start doing some formative research and taking what you've learned from going out to communities and bring that back into the software. But we want you to be able to get started with answering some simple questions. So what's the name of the project? What sector are you working in? Where is it? Partner organizations. And then a summary paragraph about the project that you have. That can be useful for a number of purposes. We have background. What are the challenges? You have root causes of the challenges of that the project is working to address. and then what are some of the root causes of those challenges. So this is just some example things, just running you through some big picture questions here. The vision, what are you trying to see at the end? Behaviors you're trying to influence, specific objectives, audiences, who's the primary audience, who else might influence this, and some of the key stakeholders. So you can see there's a lot of questions there. Now you may be wondering about this light bulb that I mentioned before. So why don't I click on that light bulb? And what we're doing is we're asking the AI that powers this to give us a suggestion on this. Anywhere you see a light bulb, the AI is going to give you some thoughts about it. And it's taking all the information that you've provided it so far. And so here in this case, it's suggesting local religious leaders, health workers and clinics, teachers and schools. So now you may or may not like that, and you can just delete and change in whatever you edit here. You can do. One of the things that we've been thinking about is a way to have a better separation between what is the AI suggesting and what are you writing. And what we want to make sure is that no one just kind of clicks on a bunch of light bulbs and now you have something that no one's really vetted very well. But we found this to be pretty useful, even to the point of it could suggest a different name for you based again on all the input that you give it. So this is currently okay, it just said healthy communities, brighter futures. Okay, that might be a nice name. Maybe it'll have a different one if we suggest something again. I guess just came up with the same one for that. But it will, as you change the content in here, clicking on these light bulbs will give you suggestions. Now, those suggestions are based on what it would suggest as an expert in social behavior change. Now, one other thing I want to show you about this. So this gets to this idea of kind of guiding you based on the current frameworks where this information comes from. But we've also talked about engagement with communities. And so this button here, broadcast, what we've done, and this is actually working code that we've been testing and used. It works really pretty smoothly with our Ghana team as well. When you click on broadcast, what that does is it sends out a message to all the stakeholders in this project. Now, some of them may be logged in users of your web application, the ones you saw before, and they could get an email. But what about for a representative of a community who may live in that community, may have a smartphone or some phone with WhatsApp or maybe just SMS messages? But we're not talking about people with weak literacy skills. We're talking about someone who you might have met when you went out to do formative research, or but someone who is much closer to the communities you're trying to reach than your own staff or some of your partners. And so by adding them as true stakeholders to this project, when you click on this broadcast button, it sends out a WhatsApp message to all of the people involved. And it says, Lindsay has just updated the program and thought you might be interested in something related to, let's say, audiences. And so it will send the information you see here out if they say, yes, I'm interested in seeing that update. And then they can reply to that message. And when they reply to the message, you can click on messages, and what pops up is something you can see a trail of what messages you sent out. So here's a message that I sent out. And then you can also see the replies from people in the community who replied and when did they reply and what did they say. So the idea behind this is that you truly are engaging with representatives of communities, not just at the beginning, not just during formative research, but as your program evolves, as anything changes, it's as easy as tap on a button, and now you are engaged in a dialogue that everyone can equally see who logs into the website. So that's something that we think and that we will be field testing to see how much of a difference does that make, how much do people use it, how much do people in communities respond and provide information on this. So that's one of the big things we're after, or two of the big things that you just saw there was using AI to suggest things and then also engaging with communities. Now I'll show you another example where AI can suggest things in just a moment. So this is UNICEF's behavioral drivers. I showed you, this is basically taking their PDF and making it easily browsable. If you want to look at all of these different behavior drivers and the psychology type factors, sociology, environment, personal and contextual, and for each of them, you want to be able to browse, sense of ownership. What does that really mean? Social cohesion. And then when you see something that you think is useful, you can add that and it becomes part of your own project drivers. So you browse this whole thing, you tap on the ones you think are relevant, and then the software remembers that, of course, and it ties together all of the activities that you might do from there. But we're using AI again, and the AI has suggested a few particular ones. And so it suggested cognitive biases, social influence, and then some of these particular dimensions of social influence. And it suggested these things here. Now, let's just take, simplicity bias. So if you take a look at this, you see the explanation, and this came right from the UNICEF document on behavioral drivers model. But it also, the AI is explaining why it believes it's relevant to this particular project, and even gives you an example of how this type of behavioral driver has been used in other projects. And it does that for each and every one of these. So it's really trying to help you at saying, based on everything you've told me so far, and the more formative research and other information you give me, the better my recommendations are going to be. And I'll tell you why is it relevant, and then give you an example of where this has been used. And so again, based on that, it's up to you to decide to agree with the AI and to add it. It's not going to add that for you. And once you add it, then you'll see it in your list of drivers here. And here you can see this a medium importance. I might say, actually, this is a high importance. And so now this is going to be outlined in red, and something that maybe just allows you to prioritize a little bit better. And then now, based on the behavioral drivers that you've identified, or that the AI has helped you identify, we've got a list of interventions that might apply to those. So this list is specific to the behavioral drivers that you've said were useful to you, or it would be. But what I've done here is just allowed you to see some of the interventions that we've got. And you can see, if you want to add it, you can click on the add button so that you can track this. And you can see all of these different descriptions. Now, there's quite a lot of them. And this is where having AI help you start narrowing things down can be useful. No one would see a list this long if they selected particular behavioral drivers that would influence this list of interventions they might consider. And so now, if we go to activities, this feature is not really as developed fully as we plan to, but you can see you can add an activity. Say, this is something that we plan to do in our program. And here you can see which drivers does it support. And if you click on one of them, you can see who's the owner of that activity, who's actually going to get this done, what's the status of it. You can group it in different things, put some notes on it, link it to maybe a document that gives more information about that. And then this would, for those of you who use Gantt charts, that would be another feature that would come out of this. You can see the from and to is kind of the dates of when this might be used. Now we'll move on to a different feature, and this is theory of change. So again, you can see the broadcast and messages button here. So as you develop your theory of change, or as you make a change to it, you can share that with everyone, including people in the communities who might be interested in that. It can either send the diagram that you're about to see, or it could send a text description of a piece of this. Again, not to overwhelm people, but to kind of focus on one key element or kind of combination of things. And then you'll be able to read their responses back, and everyone will be able to see the logged comments of what the members of the communities that will be affected by this program, what their views are about all this. So let me just show you kind of the basic idea here is let's say that I wanted to do some sort of, I'm sorry, I'm not going to think of anything too exciting right now, but let's say I want to have an activity, and my activity is going to be to facilitate discussion on gender roles. So that's an activity, and so I'm adding that here. And then maybe I'm also going to have some let's why not use Amplio talking books to I'll say Amplio talking books used to listen to drama about gender roles. Now this is getting a little long. It's going to be kind of a more than we want there. Communities discuss, or communities engage in discussion. Please don't critique me on how good my theory of change is here. We'll just call that, maybe we'll call that an output for now. And so then what we will do is we'll say, let's, if we do this, if we facilitate discussion, maybe that will cause communities to engage. So I'm just clicking on this and connecting these two things here. Sorry, let me click properly. And so this allows you to build a little diagram. And then if you want, you can keep it that simple. What we want to do is just make this really easy. You should be able to say A is something where maybe an output. And now I'm going to say, B is an activity, and we're going to add that. And you can just kind of very quickly create a big list of things that you're thinking about, and then connect them later as you like, or disconnect it. You can say, let's remove this connection. But what you see in this connection is I think really important for a theory of change is, what assumptions do you have why this thing is actually going to lead to this? What are some of the risks? We'll do a little bit more than this, than just these empty boxes. But these connections are something that we need to think about. Why do we believe this is going to lead to this? Now we can turn on a logic model view here, because we tagged these as activities and these as outputs. You can look at it that way. And now these, I just stuck this on here, some examples of various different programs. Now some of these get quite complicated, but you can see some examples of how this might look. And you can click on the factors, but you can also click on the individual items and change the label, of course, change where they are in the logic model, even in the socio-ecological model, which will allow you to kind of think about, wait a minute, am I only focused on individual level things? Why am I not thinking about policy or organization? And then have you validated this is actually happening? If so, maybe you just don't want to think about it anymore. But until you do, you might want to pay attention to that. And then indicator, of course, this will relate to a whole other module in the software. How are you measuring whether this is actually happening? Now, again, the AI is going to be able to suggest some indicators for you. We'll have little light bulbs on all these things. We've already proven out that using large language models, we can get some very useful results, specifically around social behavior change. And that's what we'll be doing, is applying that to each of these little areas. So yeah, this gives you a sense of the being able to map out your theory of change, in that whether you're doing everything or whether you're using some assistance from the built-in AI here, you're building on everything else that you've produced. And then you can see some of the other areas, communications and messaging. And just for time, we're trying to keep on a schedule. I'm not going to show you everything in detail, but what messages might you want to create as part of this, your campaign? There's a lot of monitoring and evaluation that we'll have here. As I mentioned, what are the indicators that are going to measure whether these things happen? I've already had some discussions with MIT's Poverty Action Lab about applying some of their methodology to this. And then project management tools and some basic documents. So I hope that's helpful, just a little bit of a whirlwind tour of what we have. It'll give you a sense of what to expect in the beta release in June. And now I'll hand back to Lindsay.
Great. Awesome, Cliff. So exciting. I've seen a couple of comments in the chat already, people that are excited about this. So we're going to go back to Mentimeter. I'm going to get my screen share rolling again. Again, for those folks that have just come in, we are using Mentimeter to gather some of your thoughts and feedback and questions, and the rest of the session now will be discussion and feedback from you. So we're going to start with some guided questions on Mentimeter, and then open it up to some Q&A for you to share all your thoughts as well. But again, for those that just joined, you can navigate to menti.com and use this code that you see here at the top, or maybe we can put that link again in the chat. So moving into our next question for discussion. Well, first of all, we just want kind of your really quick impression of the tool that you see so far. Again, a very preliminary version, but in your mind, how likely would you or your team be to use the SBC Impact Designer in your work? How likely do you think that you would put this thing to use? We've got some responses coming in. Yeah, we can see sort of the distribution of those, scale of 1 to 5. 1 is nope, I'm not going to use it at all. 5 is I will for sure use it. We're seeing maybe an average of 4 or so, a lot of 4s. People, maybe impressed, interested, maybe still curious to see how they might be able to put it to use. Does anybody want to come off mute and give their thoughts, their response to this live? Any comments on what you're thinking for this question? Not sure. I'm seeing a couple of comments in the chat as well. Excellent SBC tool. Thank you, Jacob. Great. Well, thank you. So that just gives us kind of a temp check of what you think about the tool and how helpful it will be for you. Let's move on to the next question, actually, which does give you a little bit more sort of an open-ended chance to give us your impressions. So yeah, just share with us, what's your first impression of this SBC Impact Designer, of this software? What's kind of the first thing that came to your mind when you saw some of what Cliff was presenting, or what's kind of your gut reaction to this? Will it be helpful? Will it not be helpful? What's impressive? What might you still have questions about or you're looking for? We're starting to see some answers come in. Let's take a look. Please keep providing your input. Elaborately done, useful. Let's see, that was doable but needed political will and funds. Yeah, funding is the question. Good insight, vast experience, user friendliness. Might be a bit complicated at the field level. That's great. That's exactly what we want to hear. Again, we're designing this with maybe more of those field level folks in mind, or at least, program managers, program teams to be able to use this. So definitely, maybe whoever had this comment, we'd love to hear more about your thoughts on that. A good starting point, user-friendly, relevant, helpful. Great. Need ability to use offline and upload. Complex aware. Yeah, that's, the balance that we're trying to strike is maintaining the complexity, but making it digestible and simple enough for everybody to use and engage with. Great. Does anybody want to come off mute and share a couple of their comments or thoughts? You can raise your hand. Audrey, yeah. Audrey, go ahead.
Thank you, loads. I'm really appreciating the way in which it is not so difficult to navigate, as it were. And it also helps in terms of getting us to appreciate even the flow in the theory of change. So I'm liking it, and I think I'd be happy to try it out. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Audrey. That's great to hear. Yeah. Anybody else? Yep. Erin, I think that's you.
There was a comment in the chat about question about what languages would it be available in, and also a question about use of iPhones, which I think like the concern around having a mobile phone version.
Thanks, Erin. Yeah, great points. I don't know, Cliff, do you want to give any feedback on either of those questions about languages or mobile compatibility?
Yeah, I guess I'd just say we would anticipate that there will be a demand for this to be in kind of all the major, like the UN languages, Spanish, French, Arabic, English. So we expect that will be needed, and at what rate we do that will probably depend on funding, and also the same thing for mobile offline apps, as opposed to of course making it very mobile friendly. We already are doing that on a web framework that makes it very mobile friendly, whether it's an iPhone or Android phone. But in terms of developing a separate app to like help in sort of the offline experience, that would just depend on funding. I don't think would be something we would be able to do this year.
Great. Thanks. All right. Thank you for your comments here. Let's move on to the next question. So Cliff showed you a number of different features, a number of different things that we've been sort of prioritizing to make happen, to make this tool able to offer. And so we just want to get your feedback on how important some of these different features are. If we're prioritizing some over others, really focusing on, as Cliff mentioned before, developing one element so that it's going to be really, really helpful and useful for folks. Or, maybe deprioritizing some other elements that people think are maybe not quite as necessary. How might you think about prioritizing some of these features, or which ones, you see are less needed in your work, and which ones would be really, really critical, really, really valuable for you to help you in your work? So a couple responses coming in so far. I know there's a number of different items to move through. But yeah, we're seeing, well, I'll let things shake out. I won't give my comments yet. We're seeing a lot of movement, a lot of action, a lot of interest in developing messages and developing some of the communications materials, which is great. And then of course, developing an indicator tracking table, some of that support for monitoring and evaluation, developing that monitoring and evaluation plan for sure. Browsing and selecting behavioral drivers, as Cliff showed us, making it easy to kind of identify which drivers and then activities you might want to do based on those drivers. Great. And then maybe less interest in the resource library. That's interesting. That's great. Great to hear. Maybe a little bit less interest in the WhatsApp. That's also great to hear. And using AI and the theory of change. But the AI and the theory of change are kind of close. Great. Well, thank you for sharing that feedback. This is a really helpful snapshot for us to understand kind of what the interest is in these different features. I don't know, Cliff, any questions or comments you want to share? We want to jump in on?
No, this is really helpful. Yeah. Don't really have anything to add, but this is definitely was going to make a difference in the kind of questions that we'll want to ask to decide how much deeper to go. I think like the indicator tracking table is something that we've done very little on. So I imagine, Lindsay, that's probably jumping out to you.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Next thing to prioritize.
Lindsay, there are a couple comments in the chat as well.
Thank you, Erin.
I see the comment from Claudia about Compass. And I agree, Compass has got some really great resources there. And it may be that we make it as simple as link to Compass and, you know, a couple other of these sort of aggregate sites.
Definitely. All right, let's move again to our next questions. These last couple questions are again very open-ended, you know, really wanting to hear your thoughts. So first here, how would you imagine using a tool like this in your work? And what other features would you like to see? So yeah, maybe kind of play out in your mind, how could you see, you know, that story of, you know, applying this in your work with your colleagues, with your partners, and what features, what elements might be useful for you as you kind of play that out, that you might not see currently, or that maybe you see currently, but we need to build on or adapt or adjust. So hopefully that's clear. A couple answers coming in so far. Support in streamlining the review process of project outputs by the stakeholder. The planning stage, you would use this mostly in the planning stage, definitely. Yeah, again, a lot of use for maybe planning, project planning and design. Troubleshooting in real time, yeah, that's great. That's definitely a goal, again, to be able to apply kind of an adaptive management approach and iterate and respond to feedback that's coming in from stakeholders. Absolutely. Somebody would use it to identify behavior drivers. Suggestions of a framework or tools or data that can be retrieved for formative research to strengthen strategy design. Yep. Somebody would use it for capacity building. That's great for capacity building with teams, with maybe local teams. Offline option, planning and M&E. More AI. Somebody's excited about AI. That's great. But we have also AI features a bit rough. Definitely would expect it to be a big part of strategy design. Maybe you need to refine it a little bit more. Providing links to projects with similar objectives. Yeah, so connecting, you know, work that people have done in the past, how you can sort of draw on that for sure. Participation and involvement of stakeholders. Great. These are all great pieces of feedback. Does anybody want to come off mute and just share a couple of your comments or thoughts on this topic? You can raise your hand or just jump in.
Lindsay, I think there were a couple questions in the chat that we didn't address yet, if we want to do that while we're waiting.
Sure. Yeah, I'm seeing this most recent one from Chris. Will there be integrations, extensibility APIs to connect to other platforms to pull in or push out data? Question for you, Cliff.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things. I had a brief mention of it on a slide that in 2024, that would be the kind of thing that we might be doing more of. So we're already integrated with Twilio to be able to send and receive WhatsApp messages or any SMS messages. But I think there'll be many other types of platforms, especially around data collection, that we won't want to invent. We'll just plug into them. So I think which ones will probably depend on the kind of feedback that we're getting now for what's the highest priority. And then I saw that there was a question about great tool with a lot of boxes ticked, quite impressive. To what extent does this support infusion of context-specific innovation and agile creativity? And I love that question, because those are important things to be doing. I'm not sure I know exactly if I understand kind of where you're thinking about it. So enabling, so the tools supporting the infusion of that, I would say part of this is agile creativity can come from communities, and the context specificity will come from that, having that stronger connection with communities. So we certainly hope that's the case. And I also think that there's some opportunities with using AI in this to be able to stimulate some ideas that people aren't thinking of. But I don't know if that's really getting to your question. So sorry if I don't have an answer that quite addresses it.
I would say that, I think maybe this gets at your question. We are trying to strike a balance between, offering frameworks, offering even these AI suggestions, offering something to at least get teams started in their thinking, get the ball rolling, and maybe spark some ideas. But right, we also want to make sure that we're designing the platform to be able to be responsive to particular teams' needs and particular contexts. And so to really be able to be always editable and always just kind of, make it the way that you need it to be, make it yours. And so, yeah, it's kind of a line to walk. We want to offer some structure, some frameworks, and again, these suggestions that AI are generating can be useful, but we don't want you to feel limited maybe within that. So hopefully maybe that gets at your question. Okay, anybody want to come off and offer any comments on this current question about, how would you think about applying this tool and maybe other features you want to see or you really would want to build out? Okay. Well, great. We've gotten some great comments on Mentimeter, and we're going to do one more question. Keep having to move my little Zoom box around to navigate. All right, our last question here that we want to hear from you about is, what barriers or challenges might you or your team or your partners face in using a tool like this? What might be some of the complicating factors? We really here want to understand what those barriers would be so that we can, incorporate addressing those as much as we can into the development of this tool. So eager to hear your comments about this. Give you a couple seconds to get your thoughts down. We've got a couple answers coming in so far. So bandwidth, curious to hear more about that. If you mean time, the team's bandwidth, the team's sort of ability to devote time and energy to this, or if you mean more on the technical side, internet connectivity and internet bandwidth. But for sure, I could see both of those being relevant. Technology literacy, yeah. So hopefully making this as easy as possible to interact with for teams that maybe aren't as used to working with programs like this, computer programs. So that's where I think the work that we want to continue to do on user interface design will come in. But yeah, making sure that we bring in somebody who can do UI design that, is familiar with these different contexts that the tool will be used in, for sure. Capacity of team, capacity to use technology. Yep, that's a theme. Some of these are longer. Let me just digest them. We may need assurance that information shared is secure and can be kept confidential for sensitive information. Cliff, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's we deal with this all the time. Our Amplio Talking Book program takes user feedback messages from people in communities, and sometimes they're talking about sensitive issues, and we encrypt that from the talking book all the way through till it gets on the server. And the only thing that you need to worry about is just that you're only giving user IDs and passwords to people who should have access to that. And so I think the same thing would apply here, where it's in the opportunity to reach out to community members to be engaged in this, that you are being careful with that you're not giving too much access to too many people if there's sensitive issues involved.
For sure, for sure. I'm seeing a couple comments maybe related, getting buy-in from diverse people in an organization who are involved in SBC. But then also SBC is often only one part of a broader project, right? We recognize that, SBC is one element of, a broader project work that we're doing, or the broader impact that we might be aiming for and accountable for. We definitely believe that most, if not all, development projects have some element of SBC. And so, getting people to maybe understand that, or sort of, shift their thinking, buy into that, is maybe a challenge. But we really do hope that this tool will be relevant and applicable to projects across the spectrum, again, across sectors, and then, with differing levels of maybe focus on SBC, or hopefully maybe a project might not initially think that SBC is a big element of what they're doing, but maybe when they dive a little bit deeper, they understand, oh, there really is a lot of this theory and a lot of these ideas that we really can and should apply to our work. Maybe, coming around and realizing that SBC is maybe a bigger thing than they might have initially, a bigger element than they might have initially thought of. So for sure, I know that that's a challenge maybe to get people, other stakeholders, to come around to some of these ideas, but we're hoping that this tool will help to do that.
And Lindsay, I see a couple comments that were, one just scrolled off the screen a little bit, but concerns about, so one in the kind of towards the top left, or on the left side in the middle, and one down at the bottom right now, that are both kind of concerned of, might the AI suggestions actually be a problem? And I think that's a really important question in many different domains with AI. And this is one of the reasons why we are going to be doing such extensive field tests, is where you just saw just kind of the tip of the iceberg of where we'll be using this, things like suggesting what audience might be applicable to this, or which of the behavioral drivers you might want to focus on at the beginning. But we'll be using it in many more places. And so we will be getting some a really extensive feedback from people using it in actual programs, whether these are helpful or not. And for any of you who are interested in this, and as SBC experts would like to be able to see this in action and critique it, we would welcome that.
Anybody want to come off mute and offer some comments live to the group?
Yeah.
Yeah, Elizabeth, thanks.
Yeah, so for me, this is super exciting because it's like having AI on your team, and you're like, good morning, AI. Any suggestions you have for the project? And like how any brainstorming session, things come up, get knocked out. But then it would be good to have an additional team member, really. And the added advantage of having AI with experienced professionals, people with vast experience on the field. So it's really makes it more exciting, because by the time we all make our suggestions, we finally want to know what AI thinks, and then it will help decision making, really, if you ask me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, I know, we're all kind of, to get broad and kind of philosophical right now, we're all kind of as a society grappling with the power of AI and the potential, but also maybe the pitfalls, the dangers. And that's definitely, what we're grappling with too at Amplio in incorporating this into this designer tool is, it's very exciting. There's a lot of potential to kind of have this as an extra, brain or voice on your team as you're describing, Elizabeth. I think that's a great way to put it. But right, we want to avoid that people, as Cliff said before, just click a bunch of light bulbs and pop out a program design without, as the comment here says, verifying and really validating and adapting for your context and for your needs and your team. So yeah, we definitely will spend a lot more time putting some thought into how to make that most effective for people. Okay, I want to, we've got 15 more minutes or so on our session. Thank you so much to all of you that are still joining and engaging. This is wonderful, great feedback for us to hear. I want to open it up to your questions at this point. What questions do you have about the tool, about the way forward? Anything that you still want to understand about this SBC Impact Designer? Please, you can, as we have been, input your questions on this slide on Mentimeter. You can also put some things into the chat as folks have been doing, or please just come off mute, raise your hand if there's a few people in the queue, but come off mute and share your questions live. So what questions do you have for us as we get ready to close? Maybe pop into the chat and see what might be coming through there. How can we get the platform subscription? Yeah, so as Cliff described earlier in his presentation, this year we are planning a couple different beta releases, and beta releases are just sort of initial versions of the software that we're putting out for testing, just to kind of understand how people will use it, what's needed, what needs to be improved, what bugs there are. And so these beta versions will be no fee, no subscription attached to those. You're really kind of supporting us to start to test and apply these in your work. But hopefully these beta versions will also be, helpful in contributing to your work as well. So as we're in this beta phase, there won't be a fee or subscription attached. Once we release the full version, the plan is next year in 2024. We will likely have a fee structure associated, and that will be maybe kind of a sliding scale, or, depending on the size of the project, the size of the organization, and what your needs are, we might have a varying fee structure for different levels of access, or just, different needs and where you're coming from with your organization. And so, we're still nailing that down. We can't give you details yet. But that's the gist of it, is that no fee structure while we're beta testing this year, and then next year when we release, we'll have some kind of maybe tiered or sliding scale fee structure to access. A comment in the chat as well: the previous registration process for beta testing, is there still room to join? Yes, absolutely. That is definitely one of the things we wanted to leave you with on this session, is we do need people that want to test this out this year. We're very, very interested in working with partners. We want to hear from you if you're interested in beta testing, particularly if you have an upcoming project or a project that's in the design phase that you would think you could use this tool for this year. Yes, so maybe we can put into the chat our contact page, our contact information, and I'll also just jump to the next slide to share this as well. You can see on our website, amplio.org/SBC contact is a contact form, a very quick and easy contact form you can fill out that will send us a message, and you can tell us that you're interested in beta testing, and we'll be in touch. We'll have more conversation to get us ready for that, to work with you. You can visit our website, that URL, and send us that contact page. You can also reach out to me directly at lindsay@amplio.org. That's with an AY. So yes, we definitely are still looking for partners to help us beta test this year, and would be thrilled to hear from you.
Lindsay, I was also asked, where is the AI coming from? We are currently using OpenAI's GPT APIs. And so for those of you who are familiar with ChatGPT, if you were to kind of simulate where some of this is coming from, what you would do is you take all of the stuff that you're entering, all of the things that you click on in our software, write it all up into a prompt that you type into ChatGPT, And then when it gave you the answer, you would copy and paste that into the right part of the software. And that's basically what we're doing for you. We're taking everything that you put into the software, we're kind of compacting it in a really kind of smart way to have ChatGPT give a response, and then using ChatGPT's response to do things like select which is the best driver and why, and to give you some information about that. So it is using a large language model in right now, specifically OpenAI's.
Thanks, Cliff.
And yeah, thank you for all your questions. We actually had 150 people register for this webinar, and I think we had about a third of that show up. So for the 2/3 of the people that watch the recording, they're all going to benefit from the questions that you all asked and your thoughts about that. So thank you for contributing to all of them as well.
Again, yeah, your thoughts, your comments, your feedback are hugely helpful to inform as we are continuing to develop this tool. Again, if you want to work with us to beta test, or if you want to just learn more, if you have questions that come up afterwards, please reach out either at that URL on our website, or you can email me directly. So any other final questions or comments from folks?
If I can jump in,
Yes, please.
Lindsay,
Yes.
It's Audrey here, just to say thank you very much. We're a very small organization working in the area of women economic empowerment and gender equality. We are just trying out programs with limited funding, but because we're a very small organization, we think this is an opportune time for us to learn this technology and sort of be adept at it. Hopefully that will increase our visibility and indeed our work. So yeah, we are excited, and we have completed the form for you to consider partnering with us here in Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Audrey. Yep. Thanks for reaching out. I'll definitely be in touch. We can keep talking. But again, yeah, we hope that this tool is exactly for teams like yours to help you kind of build upon your work and create more impact. So thank you so much for your comments, Audrey. That's wonderful to hear, and we'll be in touch. Well, I think we'll close out. We will be sharing the recording and some follow-up communications with all of you. So please be on the lookout for that. And again, please reach out to us. Let's continue this conversation. But thank you so much for your time today and for sharing all of your ideas. This has been very, very valuable. Thanks, everyone.